Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk today. The topic is Pass the Kombucha. And my essay this week was about this idea of vulnerability and the times that we choose to make ourselves vulnerable versus the times our vulnerability is kind of thrust upon us. And as an example of sort of having your vulnerability thrust upon you, I was writing about this time that I had food poisoning. This was years ago when I had first moved to Los Angeles, and I was teaching, kind of hit the ground running when I got here, and I was teaching yoga all over town. And I was teaching 27 classes a week, which is really too much, it's too many classes. But, I was able to do it, and I needed to do it at the time. It was the only way I could sort of keep a roof over my head. And I had just moved across the country and to a, city where I didn't know anyone. And so that was what I was doing. I was getting up at usually like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was going to my own practice, and that would normally be about 2 hours. And then I'd go teach all day, and I'd be done normally around 11 o'clock at night. And somewhere in the middle of the day, I'd run home and like take my dog to Runyon for a hike. That was my sort of like, obviously home base, touchstone was my dog. I just like, that dog was my home. He was my like everything. And so I would get home and walk him and, love on him, whatever, and then be out the door again to go teach. And so at that time, meals were like happening in my car. Sometimes I'd just like make a smoothie and take it on the run or whatever. And this one night I pulled into the Whole Foods that was on Fairfax in Los Angeles, and I grabbed sushi and went on my way. I was teaching a class at Crunch Fitness, and I ate on my way, and I got there and I taught the class, and I went home and I loved on my dog and went to bed and got up in the morning, went to my practice. And at the end of my practice, I started to feel pretty weird and dizzy, woozy, just strange. And I showered and changed, and I was driving toward my class at a 9 a.m. class. And I started to realize as I was driving that there were like streaks of color coming off of people that were walking on the street, the cars next to me, the streetlights, the trees. And I began to feel incredibly nauseated. And I realized, I think I have food poisoning. So I started making calls to see if I could get my class covered, and I could not. It's too late. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to go, because there wasn't even a front desk at the studio. You had your own set of keys as the teacher. You would check in your own classes. So it wasn't like I could even call the front desk and say, please let everyone know I'm really sorry, I have food. I couldn't do that. So I just went. And it was full class, and I thought, I'm just gonna just do my best to get through this. Hopefully I can make it to the end of class. I'll go home, I'll get all my classes covered, and and go from there. And the room was heated to 90 degrees at this studio. So I'm already feeling like I'm hallucinating and feeling really, really not well. And now I'm in this like hot room with tons of people. But like, this is what's in front of me. So I start teaching the class, and it was going okay until about halfway through. And I started to realize, I'm about to have like a Linda Blair exorcism moment here. And so I managed to, and those of you who either take yoga or like teach yoga, you'll know what I'm talking about, but it was literally like almost at the halfway point of class, and I was on the second half, the end of the second half of the standing sequence right before you go to the floor. And I got these people through the last few poses on the second half of the second side. I put them in child's pose and I said, y'all, I think I'm having food poisoning. Please take a few rounds of bridge pose, keep breathing, and I'll be right back. And I saw a few people like turn and look at me, you know, with alarm and sympathy, and also probably a little bit like, what? Like, what are you doing? Like, just go have food poisoning if that's what anyway, I go out the door, and this particular studio had a shared restroom that was down an outdoor walkway, and every business on the landing, which was the second landing, had shared this restroom. So I grabbed the keys and I started doing this sort of like run walk, because I knew if I ran, it was over. And it didn't matter. I got right to the edge of this floor to ceiling window of a Pilates studio right next door to this yoga studio. And it was like Satan leaving my body in projectile fashion. There was nothing I could do. I just like opened my mouth and it was wild. I'm not going to describe it more than that, but it was just unbelievable. And I saw in my peripheral vision everyone in the Pilates studio freeze, turn, and stare at me like, what just happened? And I did not look back. I just like walked to the restroom. I opened the door, and I remember standing over the sink, like just I had my hands on the sink, and I was both like tears were streaming down my face, as they do when you are in that state of food poisoning. But I was also laughing because it was just so mortifying that my body had just, taken over, and there were like 20 witnesses, there was just nothing I could do. And I grew up in a house where appearances were everything, like everything was supposed to look right. And as long as that was going on, whatever else was happening, didn't matter. Well, here I am with like a whole bunch of people just watching me like lose it. And so I was laughing and crying. And I think I might have even said out loud, like, this has to be one for the books, like what more sort of humiliating thing can happen while you're teaching a class than that. And so I splashed water on my face and I, went back to finish the class. And I did. I taught the second half of this class. And, a few people had said to me, like, if you need to go, like, you can go. I'm like, no, I can do it. And that was one of the things I was writing about. I mean, a couple of things that kind of stand out for me now about that. It's just the total lack of compassion that I had for myself, and the type A insanity of like, I'm going to finish the second half of the standing sequence before I allow myself to, open my mouth and have this like projectile experience happen. And this idea of like, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? Like, what did I think was I going to get a gold star for finishing the second side of the, standing sequence? Or did I think people would like be uneven for the rest of the day if they didn't? Yeah, it's sort of hilarious. And also this sense I think I had of like kind of winning a medal for never not being okay, like as if there was some like tab running, and and it was going to be like somehow impressive that even though I have food poisoning, I'm finishing this class. So there's all that. But really what I was trying to illustrate is what I said at the beginning of the talk, which is this idea of like sometimes your vulnerability is thrust upon you. And sometimes you are making a choice, like you are writing an essay and you are thinking carefully about how much do I want to share and what do I need to keep for myself right now. Maybe I'm not ready to divulge that, or maybe I'll never be ready to divulge that, or maybe that would be, too much to put on the reader. Like sometimes I'm thinking about those things. What am I going to share here that gets my point across? But I'm not looking to overwhelm anyone or, trigger anyone. Like that wouldn't be my aim, right? So you get to choose, you get to figure out what am I sharing and what am I holding back? Or if you're getting to know someone and you really want them to know you, you might choose to share some things that are deeply personal that you might not, just share with everyone. You have agency over what you're sharing and what you aren't sharing. And sometimes you're in a situation where you are just vulnerable and there's no choice involved. It's just how it is. And certainly my food poisoning experience in front of the Pilates studio falls under that umbrella, but so does the current political state in the country where I live. So, I'm in the United States. Not everyone who tunes in is, obviously, but for those of us who live here and those of us who are watching what is going down, it is a wildly vulnerable time for people who feel about things the way that I do. And, I was writing that there have been times I've been teaching yoga for over 30 years, and there have been times where people have gotten angry with me for quote unquote getting political, because they just want to peace out, man, pass the kombucha. You're messing with my vibe. And I've had that kind of feedback from people, I want peace. That's what I come to. And it's well, that's fine. I'm not the right teacher then, because, after 30 plus years of teaching and just being 53 years old, it's very clear to me that your politics, that's your philosophy in action. That's what it is, right? Whatever your politics are, that's your philosophy, and that's kind of what you want to see happening in the world. And when you vote, you're voting for what you would like to see or what you think is correct as best you can. This is an imperfect, method. Certainly, we can all agree on that, I think. And it's imperfect in many, many ways, and it's not operating as intended right now. Because of gerrymandering and all kinds of other things. But that's what was supposed to happen, right? Is that you as a citizen were supposed to be able to tell your representatives what is important to you and what you want. Are you going to get everything you want? No, you're not. But hopefully you're voting for people who are going to be on the same page and try as best they can to, represent the interests that matter to you. And so for someone like me, and we do not have to agree on everything, and we're never going to agree on everything, but for someone like me, and I'm very happy to share this with you, and I think it's only fair if you're going to tune into a podcast or you're going to take someone's yoga class or you're going to read what they're writing, perfectly, reasonable for you to know what they think. So I'm going to tell you, I'm someone who genuinely believes we're all equal and we all ought to have equal access to, good drinking water, clean air, good education, the ability to decide what happens to our bodies or what doesn't happen. I don't want the government telling me what I can or can't do with my body or my daughter's body. The rage I feel, even right now, I'm sort of I feel it rising in my body because I have a son and a daughter. And I don't have to worry about the government trying to legislate over my son's body and what he can and can't do with it. Why do I have to worry about that for my daughter? Why is that a thing right now in 2024? And so I'm beside myself with just heartbreak and outrage. And, I continue to be stunned at the things that people want to control in their neighbors, and this is part of what I was writing about, is that there's a lot of uncertainty in life. And the reality is we are vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. You do not know how much time you get to have here, and you don't get to know how much time anyone else has here. Even the people you love more than anything in the world, you do not know. And from day to day, the reality, as horrible as it is to like hold this thought in your mind and in your heart, we just don't know. We don't know. Even today, and I obviously I would like to live a long, healthy, happy life. I would like to, dance at my children's weddings if they get married, certainly celebrate their graduations, be a grandma someday. Like, I want all that, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how much time I have, and neither do you. And so, excuse me. So we're vulnerable. That's part of it's an inherent, intrinsic part of being human. And a lot of people really try to like brush it to the side. They don't want to think about it. They really just, they're like very focused on, okay, I'm making my schedule and I have my routines. And on Mondays I do the grocery shopping and I go here and I get this peanut butter that I like. And if they don't have my peanut butter, like, they're very like regimented. And part of that, I think, those things that we do, we put our alerts in our phones and we make our plans, it's to feel like we have some control over our destiny, some control over at least the rest of the day, because if you were just immersed in this thought of like, okay, I'm a human being on a spinning planet in a vast universe in one solar system, like, I don't know how much time I have or how much time but you might not be able to do anything. You might just get caught up in that and be like, wow, I don't even know how to do my day now. So I understand when people want to kind of like push their mortality kind of out of their awareness, their vulnerability out of their awareness. But some people, the way that they're responding to the intense vulnerability of just being a human being and the constant uncertainty that we're all living with underneath the surface, whether we want to like stare at it in the face or not from day to day, is they start to want to control other people. And that is fear. That is a fear-based, desire, because the reality is, whatever my neighbors are doing, if they aren't like hurting me or anyone I love in any way, and they aren't like impinging on my ability to just like live my life, it has nothing to do with me. I have nothing to say about, like, live your life, do your thing. It's when people start to like decide, no, it doesn't matter if it's impinging or it's a threat to me. It's when people start to look at other people's different choices as a judgment on their choices. If somebody else is making a different choice than me, then what they're really saying is my choice is bad. That's not it. That's not true. And that is a very self-centered way to be experiencing the world, to think that someone else's choices are somehow a judgment against your choices. They have nothing to do with you. They're not even thinking about you. They're just trying to live their lives, right? They're just trying to love who they want to love and get through the day like everybody else. So that's where things get really painful, is when you are dealing with a whole bunch of people who are trying to legislate other people's rights to just try to live, and we're seeing so much of that right now. It's, and it is so painful to be swimming in these waters. There are so many people that I care about who are impacted by these things, myself included. And really at this point in time, the only demographic in this country whose rights are not like being threatened right now are, and I'm gonna, there's a lot of real talk going on because that's where we are, are white, straight men who have some money. And I'm not talking about like a lot of money, but I'm just saying like very, very poor people living at or under the poverty line. They're always, in trouble in this country. They're always fighting for like just a fair, just some decency. But if you are a straight white man and you are not in that situation, your rights are, you're fine. You're good. You don't have to worry. The rest of us, we have to worry right now. And, I I just don't I don't at this point. I'm looking at the situation, and there are times where I am just holding my head in my hands. We want to ban, I shouldn't say we, but there are like a confounding, shocking, alarming percentage of people who are ready to vote for banning people's bodily autonomy, but not assault weapons. Like, that's where we are right now. This is not it, folks. This is not it. And I was saying that it's like really wild to me that there are people on this planet who are so sure that they know what is happening and what is correct and what is not okay. Like, that is wild to me, that in and of itself, because I have grappled with what is this life about? Like, what are we doing here? And what is the meaning of life? Hopefully we're all grappling with that at some point and trying to figure it out for ourselves. Like, what do we think? Because we're not going to know. And that is, that's a core belief of mine, is that you can have your theories about what's happening, but the truth is, like, not a single one of us is going to know until we exhale for the last time what happens next. Like, we're not going to know. That's when we'll know. We exhale for the final time, and then whatever happens, and that's when we'll know, unless something changes. But that's how it is right now, and that's how it's always been. And so the people that are like, oh, this is what's happening, and this is how it works, and if you don't believe what I believe, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity. I'm like, wow, that is amazing that you feel so positive that you are right and you know what is happening, that you're ready to, like, tell other people how to live. The arrogance and hubris involved in that outlook is just amazing to me. And it's like, listen, believe what you want to believe, think what you want to think, pray in any way you want to pray, or don't pray, love who you want to love, whatever, but don't impose your views on other people, because you are no more, sure of what is happening than anyone else. And if you think you are, that's something for you to examine. But that's not where we are. We have a whole bunch of people who are like, yes, I do know what's happening. And I know that if you don't start, living the way I think you should live, you will burn in hell for all eternity. It's like, okay, okay. There's nothing, I don't even know where to go with that, except to say, like, absolutely no. Like, no, I just, I really feel whatever your spiritual practice is, and even in that term, I'm careful, because, like, to me, a spiritual practice, obviously I've been practicing yoga for over 30 years and teaching, for close to 30 years. I practiced for a good 3 years before I started taking teacher trainings and, teaching. But it's been a very long time. And that is my spiritual practice. But when I say spiritual practice, what I mean by that is, like, this is a practice for me when I get on my mat and I go through my own personal asana practice and my seated meditation practice. It's like, these are, there's a philosophy underneath the yoga practice that is very much in line with, like, every spiritual practice. When you get down to the, like, nitty gritty, it's usually just the basic stuff, like how to be a decent person, right? And it's like non-harming and, non-hoarding, like, don't take more than you need. Non-harming, like, try to walk through the world with a gentle footprint, just like the basic ethical, moral, like hopefully things that we all learned in kindergarten and ought to be able to agree on. Just like we're not going to hurt each other, and we're going to do our best to like know ourselves, try to figure out what's motivating me, what's driving me, what's scaring me, so I can be accountable for the energy that I'm spreading as I'm moving through the world, so that I can think about how I'm treating other people and the planet, so that I can think about how I'm talking to my own self inside my head, like, so that as much as possible, I'm trying to create a peaceful inner landscape, because whatever's inside of me is what I'm going to spread. That's really the idea of any spiritual practice. Know yourself, and try to figure out what you need in order to be at peace, so that you can then move peacefully through the world. Those are, like, for me, it is yoga. Like I become totally immersed in what I'm doing. I kind of like lose my small self. And what I mean by that is like the self that is wrapped up in all the plans and all the things that are going to happen and all the stuff I'm worried about and the to-do lists and the, my kids and like who's doing this and who needs that thing signed and who needs to be driven here. Like dropping all that, like all the business stuff, and just breathing and being a human being, quiet mind, open heart, present from moment to moment and curious about how I'm feeling, so that when I get off of my mat or my meditation cushion, my well is full, right? Of hopefully like curiosity, compassion, patience, awareness, acceptance, like the ability to embrace vulnerability, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not take things personally, like all that good stuff. That's where I fill my tank, is with my own spiritual practice. Like that's what works for me. I am not a zealot. I don't, yoga doesn't have to be the thing for everyone, but something. Like maybe for you, it's hiking or taking your dog for a walk or cooking, getting totally immersed. A piece of music, like playing something that just takes you away. It's anything where you are immersed in the experience and not thinking, past, future, anxiety, depression, like just you're present. You're present and you're immersed. It's such a good feeling. Some people call it being like in the flow. Some people windsurf, like whatever. I don't need it to be any one thing. I just do think for most people, it's incredibly helpful if you have something that gives you that peace, And so, but at no time, like if you're, whatever it is for you that you do regularly to feel at ease, ideally it's like making you a better person. That's hopefully the point. Otherwise, what is your spiritual practice for? And that's what happened, and that has happened continually over the years when I have said things or, pushed back, like when I've gotten quote unquote political, people are like, I just want my peace, man. Like you're ruining it. And it's like, no, that's actually not what it's for. It's not just for your peace. It's for the collective peace. The idea is like we're part of something so much bigger than any one of us. This planet has been here like long before we got here. It's going to continue spinning long after we go. We're here for a blink of time. And so really the idea is like, can I be feeling love while I'm here? Can I be spreading love while I'm here? Can I be, can I feel like how amazing it is just to get to have the experience of being a human being on a spinning planet, like in a solar system, in a vast universe? Can I maybe embrace just like how amazing that is and how incredible that is? And can I not worry about what anyone else is doing unless they're hurting other people, and then I'm going to speak up. And that is where I'm at right now, is the intense vulnerability of being in a situation where I'm just watching so many people in the country where I live, and the country that I love. That's the other thing here, is like, there's so much everything has become so polarized here. It's so black and white. You're either this way or you're that way. You're with us or you're against us. It's like there is no us and them anywhere on the planet. right? There's one people on one planet. That's it. And like really just figuring out how to share the resources and be decent to each other. It shouldn't be that hard, but it is, because people are angry and scared and violent. And when people are angry and scared, they get even more violent. Um, it is a shocking, heartbreaking thing to watch people vote against their own interests. You know, it's like it really does make you hold your head and just wonder, like, what is happening inside this person that they're ready to sign their rights away, and like, half, more than half the population with them in this country, and there have been so many places where authoritarianism has taken over. People are like, it's just, if you study world history, like it's not an original thing. It's a thing that happens, and it usually happens when people are feeling desperate. They want someone to come in with the answers, and it's like getting into a situation where the answers are dangerous for a vast number of people. That's not what you want to sign on for. It's just, it's going in the exact wrong direction. And of course, these are as I said, when I started to talk, this is my philosophy. This is my take on things. I think people ought to be able to love who they want to love. I think it is, at this point in time, when you look at what has been happening here, I've been watching, this situation, and when you have school-age children and you're living in this country, it is devastating, to kiss your kids goodbye in the morning and like have to have a silent prayer in your head that they're going to be safe at school, because we aren't making them safe at school. We will not ban assault weapons. I don't know how many people have to die before we say, like, yeah, maybe civilians don't need assault weapons. Maybe we don't need to do that. But we just some sanity, right? Just some like reasonable discourse and a way to work together. We don't have to agree on every single thing. And it kind of brought me back to this idea of like the vulnerability that's imposed on you, that's thrust upon you, versus the vulnerability that you choose. And all the different things in life, the different lessons along the way, the different experiences that show you again and again that you're vulnerable, right? And I was talking about, for me, I have 2 children. Now, to be in an environment where suddenly in 2024, we're having to defend this idea that a woman's worth or a girl's worth has to do with whether she's a baby maker or not. Like, I can't believe that that's a conversation we need to keep having, or a right that we need to keep defending, or pushing a narrative we need to push back against. It's enraging and insulting and just so wrong on every level. And there are people saying things, people at high levels of government saying things that ought to make us just stop in our tracks and say, I'm sorry, what did you just say? Did you just say the left woke is run by childless cat ladies? Is that what just came out of your mouth? Because we need to stop right here and break that down, from every angle. It's like, I think the other part of what happens here is, if you grew up in an environment where you were looking around and saying, this doesn't seem okay, and this doesn't seem right, and the people around you, especially the grown-ups around you, were telling you everything's fine, it's your perception that's wrong, it's crazy making. And it is, it just, you start to wonder what is happening, and for me, like, I'm thinking about, I grew up at my mom's house, like, she was an alcoholic, and I'm not going to talk about that for too long because I've talked about it a lot and I've written about it a lot. But I was sort of the lone voice in the family system and in her extended, like her inner circle, whatever, who was saying, like, this mom does not seem okay. I think she needs help. I think she's in trouble. And everyone around me and her was like, she's fine. She's a social drinker. You're sensitive. You know, you're dramatic. You're Sarah Bernhardt. Like that was what I was called. And it makes you question, you're like, am I not seeing things clearly? But I am not a child now. I'm a 53-year-old woman. I'm not confused about what I'm seeing, and I don't have to double check. This is not it. This is not the direction that we need to be going. And we really need to be coming together and treating people with dignity and respect and trying to work together to coexist on this planet. We do not have to agree on everything, and we're not going to. But we've got to find a way to live together, peacefully at some point in time. And it is so disheartening and scary, and all of the things, enraging and saddening to be in an environment where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know which way this ship is sailing. Like, it's precarious, it's really terrifying that it's this close. You know what I mean? That you're like, well, it could go either way. I don't know. We're either going to start sailing toward this horrific set of circumstances for so many people, or we're not. And, you don't, it's like really hard to feel like you have any power to affect the outcome. I mean, even though you do have power, and my goodness, please vote. Please vote. I spoke to a straight white man yesterday who told me he wasn't sure he was voting because it doesn't really matter. It's like, no, sir. Actually, it doesn't really matter for you, maybe, but it matters for everyone else. So, I don't know, perhaps care about that. Care about the women in your life, or, just think about all the different people in your life who might be impacted depending on which way things go, and vote for them. So that is not, that is it is not an essential thing that you agree with everything, that a party is doing or saying or thinking. It's that you're hopefully agreeing with the core stuff, like people deserve to have equal rights here. And not, this is not to say that that's ever been the case, but let's at least keep trying to move in that direction. Let's at least keep trying to be who we've always said we are. We have never managed to do it. We've never been in a situation in this country where there's equal rights under the law. Let's name that, right? But let's at least keep trying to sail in that direction and not take a wild turn, toward the other direction. And could we care about each other? Even if it doesn't impact you personally, could you care about the people around you? And that's, another part of the equation that's just, it's tough. And there are a lot of people who are like, oh, it's all the same. They're just figureheads. They're figureheads who appoint Supreme Court justices who have lifetime appointments, and, federal district judges who, this stuff has an impact for decades. So it's not like it doesn't make any difference. It does. Anyway, that is on my heart and in my mind. And, it's very, very difficult to wake up and see people just really want to exert control in the worst possible ways over their neighbors. It is really, it is painful and scary, and the anxiety around that, about what is going to happen, and not feeling like you have enough control, enough impact, like enough ability to just ensure things are going to be sane and decent. Like you don't get to know that, and that's like, it's a terrible place to be existing in these uncertain waters. So there's, that's back to the theme of my essay this week, and the talk is like the vulnerability that you choose versus the vulnerability that is thrust upon you. And I think all of us here who believe the way I do, and again, there's like, a lot of people who don't believe any of the things that I just talked about clearly. But the people who are sort of like-minded, we're all in the same state of just, intense concern about where we are and where we're heading. And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard enough when you are choosing to make yourself vulnerable, right? You're deciding like, okay, I feel safe, and I want to share some things that I wouldn't normally share with most people, but with this person I want to, because I really, really want them to know me. That is vulnerability that you are willingly, intentionally, embracing. There's the vulnerability of just living, that it's going to make sense to embrace at some point, because the ride is a lot smoother if you're not trying to grip and control like I was. Like, let me get everybody to the second half of the standing sequence before I go have food poisoning. Like, life will get a lot easier if you just kind of, take your like white knuckling hands, sticky hands off the steering wheel, and realize you're not actually driving like the big bus. You're just driving your little car. And like most of the time, it's enough work just to try to manage your own responses to what's happening around you. Like, even that's hard to control, right? Sometimes something happens and it's really hard not to just bam react. You got to like work to slow down your breathing and like, just kind of like pause for a minute and calm your nervous system and extend, people the benefit of the doubt, and like remind yourself that most things are not personal, like all that stuff before you then decide how you're going to respond. Even that is really hard to do, right? Let alone trying to control anything else, circumstances, whatever's going to happen in the road in front of you, let alone what your neighbor's doing, which is not your work, right? Even that's like hard enough. So there's trying to embrace the vulnerability of just being human. But then there's the vulnerability that is thrust upon you, like having food poisoning, and there's just nothing you can do. You're going to have this Linda Blair moment in front of this floor-to-ceiling window with like 20 people who are going to like stop their Pilates and stare. Like, there's nothing you can do, right? Or you're in a political environment, and half the people that you're seeing are like believing things that are terrifying to you. It's very hard. And so, obviously part of what I wanted to share in the essay and in the podcast this week are my own feelings about all these things, in case that isn't clear. And I know it's not going to be for everyone, and I may lose some people, and, I understand. But for me, it's like all of us really need to try to do whatever we can right now to at least have conversations about things, to at least, and that's part of what has gotten lost here, is like, we just can't, there's no discourse anymore. There's no ability to have any kind of nuanced conversation with anyone. And the person, this straight white man who told me he wasn't even sure he was going to vote yesterday, I had to calm myself before I got into a conversation with him about why that was so devastating for me to hear, and why I really hoped he would rethink that. Because if I had just lost it on him, I don't think that I would have had a chance of getting through. I don't know if I did get through, but I know that I tried, and I tried to be calm and explain why I felt the way that I felt with like concrete examples, and try to tell him what it's like to have a daughter in this world right now. Um, that's the only chance you have, is if you can speak to somebody with some kind of hope that they're going to recognize a shared humanity, and maybe rethink. That's your best hope. And so that is where I'm coming from, certainly. But also just, sharing with you. And I had a really hard time writing the essay, because there were moments where I got so angry that I cut and paste entire paragraphs and just put them way down. So I was like, all right, that's not going to be helpful. I have, people in my own family who have wildly different views about some of these things, and it is painful. It's painful, to feel like, wow, this person that I have a shared history with would vote in a way that would be so awful for me and my daughter. That is very painful. And it's just the world that we're in right now, and you can do your best, and I certainly do, to have conversations with people and not attack, not demean, as hard as it is, but to say, like, this is why that is really just awful for me to hear, and I really, really hope you give it some thought. But the other thing I wanted to say is, for those of you who are on the same page, with me, who believe in like a peaceful world for people. And I mean, look, again, it's not to say that everything that's been happening is in line with that, because it's not. There's a lot of awful, awful things happening in the world right now. Devastating things where you're just like, this is how we're treating each other. So believe me, I'm not, in our country, for me at least, there is no, we have a, binary, we have a two-party system, really, okay? And I mean, yeah, there are like third-party people, but they're not, if you're voting for someone who has no hope of winning, that is not, then you're making it precarious for a lot of people. You are. I mean, it's just the way it is right now. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't try to like fix the system, because I certainly agree the system could use an overhaul in so many ways. All we need to do is look at proof is in the pudding, right? Clearly, the system's not going well here. And it's not to say that I'm in line with everything, that is happening. Clearly, I'm liberal. I mean, I think this is very clear. I'm a yoga teacher living in Southern California. And that's, I'm not hiding where I'm coming from. I definitely believe that all people deserve to have dignity. And I think we're far from the ideal of where I would love to see things, but I at least want to be moving in that direction. I do think the entire world is just, power hungry and violent. And I think that, we need a real overhaul. But certainly going in the wrong direction is not going to help anyone, anywhere, in any part of the world. It's not going to be good for anyone. So if you are already heartbroken about things that are happening in this world, genocides that are happening all over the world, you don't want to head in a direction that's going to make it all worse. You want to try to head in a direction where at least there's some hope to make things better. That's where I'm coming from. So I hope this has been helpful. I understand, like I said, I know these are really tough times, and very, very divisive, polarizing times where it's easy to, you can turn into the thing that you hate. You can become the person who's just attacking with vitriol and snark, and that's not going to help either. So just to try to remind yourself that really when you see people trying to overpower other people, what is motivating that is fear on some level, and it's just become twisted in this way that is really scary and unfortunate. But happy people don't try to overpower other people. They're just happy. They're going about their lives, they're happy, and they're trying to hopefully spread some joy. They're not looking at their neighbor trying to manage what God they believe in, who they love. Like they're not getting involved in that because they're busy like living their lives. It's people who are unhappy, scared, confused, who start to try to like manage what other people are doing. And so just to try to have, I know it is difficult, but to try to have some compassion and to not allow yourself to become the thing that you don't like, So I'm sending you lots of love. I hope that this was helpful. If nothing else, it clarifies my own feelings about things in case you didn't know. I think most people who've been with me for a long time, whether they're like reading my stuff or, taking my classes or listening to them, they know where I'm coming from. But, in case you didn't, now you do. I really do want, I want a peaceful world for everyone. Like I want everyone's children to be safe and joyful, and I'm just sending you a lot of love. And if you're struggling right now because of the vulnerability, if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety, there are things, don't forget to calm your own nervous system. I was saying when I was writing the essay that I couldn't sleep the other night. It was the night before last. I was just up because I was feeling so much anxiety about the situation. And I didn't want to make it go away. I didn't want to sort of like, okay, I'm going to do some 4-7-8 breathing, or I'm going to run my legs up the wall, or I'm going to, meditate. Like I wanted to lean in to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling so that I could write the essay that I wrote, So yeah, spiritual practice, whatever it is that you do, hopefully it is making you a more empathetic, compassionate person. And I'm just sending you lots of love.